Thanks for joining us. It has been a busy week. Europe suffered a brutal heat wave. There were massive earthquakes in Venezuela. And in D.C., the Great American State Fair opened with attractions including bull riding, a Ferris wheel, and a speech from Donald Trump, which one fan in particular was very excited about.
Today will be my 116th Trump rally.
People are saying that this shouldn't be a Trump rally, that this should be a non-political event. What do you make of all that?
Oh, I wish they would just shut up. He's the president. Like last week, it was the president's birthday. If he wants to have some bare-knuckle boxing on the White House lawn and people kicking each other in the faces, fine, great.
That is an interesting take. Now, I am not sure he's the person to trust on whether or not Trump is overdoing it, given that it seems he woke up that morning, put one hat on his head and then said, no, that is simply not enough. Also, 116 Trump rallies? I didn't even know there'd been that many of them. I know Trump has been alive for a long time, but nowadays he's mostly asleep and has doctor's appointments approximately 450 days out of the year. Where does he find the time? But the State Fair wasn't the only thing drawing attention in D.C. this week, because not far from it, another of Trump's pet projects continued to unravel.
The nation's reflecting pool, the subject of intense focus in President Trump's ongoing campaign to refresh Washington, D.C., is still looking more algae green than America blue.
There's lots of green, and it smells really bad.
Yeah. There's lots of green and it smells really bad. It's never a great sign when the feedback for your national monument sounds exactly like a review for Sex with the Grinch. Green, smelly, good communicator though, 3 stars. Trump's renovation of the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool continues to be an absolute train wreck. It's been plagued by enormous pools of algae, large chunks of blue sealant have been peeling off, and just this week, a trio of dead ducks were discovered there, prompting a spokesperson for the Centre for Biological Diversity to say Trump was wasting taxpayer money, turning the reflecting pool into a giant duck death trap. Which is clearly awful. Ducks shouldn't have to worry about getting murdered by the reflecting pool. They should be worried about getting shot by a hunter, getting eaten by a predator, or getting teased by me for having a corkscrew-shaped penis. As we have mentioned repeatedly before, all male ducks have them, including Donald's, by the way. Put some pants on, you pervert, and show some dignity. Your nephews are dead. They died in the reflecting pool, Donald. May their memory be a blessing. And in response to all of this, Trump shifted into full blame deflection mode this week, claiming that there had been sabotage and railing on social media against a, quote, crazy pro-algae, likely paid protester. Which is funny even before you realise he's referring to this, frankly, excellent frog. And as for that peeling liner, Trump offered this explanation.
We have a, I think, 290, 300-foot slit right through it, probably a box cutter or a knife of some kind.
National Guard and police have been all over the mall. How would these vandals have gotten so close to do something like that? Do you have any proof of this?
I mean, we didn't have a lot of them then. Who would think that somebody would go into a pool and take a knife and start cutting it?
But do you have proof of that?
Yeah, we have
you have
proof.
photos or videos?
Well, let's put it this way. When you have a 350, I think it's 350, not 250, a 350-foot slit from one end to the other, you think that's proof?
No! No, I don't. So over the course of a minute there, that slit grew from 290 to 300 to 350 feet, depending on how prone to exaggeration Trump felt at any given second. Now, experts have noted it'd be very challenging to cut that liner, and it's much more likely that the repairs were just done too hastily. It also may not have helped that during them, Trump literally drove over the pool in his motorcade. And yet, Trump kept pushing the sabotage conspiracy, and his supporters kept trying to sell it, even when the evidence was just laughably weak.
We haven't been able to verify the video, but take a look. June 19th, a male, blue shirt, reaches in, stays there for a little while. He goes back down, comes back up multiple times. What's he doing? Then a female, white tote bag. She reaches in, needs a better angle, sets the bag down, dives in a little deeper. And we don't know who these people are. No one was stopped or questioned by police, so no arrests. And we don't have the police report yet. But what are they doing with their hands in the pool? Are they cutting the lining? Are they peeling off the paint? And we don't know if they're committing a crime. They'll probably tell you they dropped their wedding ring.
Wait. Is that the best you've got? That is pathetic. As for they'll probably tell you they dropped their wedding ring, yeah, maybe they did. Maybe those people at the reflecting pool dropped their wedding ring after leaving their wife for a 25-year-old co-worker. Jesse would know what that is like. It's actually one of the many fun facts that you can learn about on his Wikipedia page, along with... In November 2024, Waters stated he had not been invited to his mother's home for Thanksgiving. And I do not blame his mom for that. She's a child psychologist and she tried her best. Sometimes you just get one that sucks. Though it does now make much more sense that Jesse will willingly humiliate himself by pursuing the approval of a withholding parental figure that will simply never come, and sadly he'll now die starving for it while his mom spends Thanksgiving in a warm home surrounded by people that she loves. It's basically A Christmas Carol if Scrooge had ignored all the ghosts, even though one was literally his mom. Meanwhile, the administration has been trying to fix things by pumping out the algae and pouring in jugs of hydrogen peroxide. But it is now at the point where the National Guard have stepped up patrols of the area and fencing has been put up around the pool. In fact, when you Google it now, you'll find this label saying it is temporarily closed. Like it's a Chipotle that the health department shut down after finding a dead mouse in the guac. And the administration is still refusing to question whether any of this might have been the fault of the companies that they gave contracts to, a hiring process that itself now seems pretty questionable.
Repairs are adding to the already over-budget project, totaling more than $16 million after a pair of no-bid contracts.
One of those companies, Green Water Services. The White House denied any role in the company's hiring. But last year, Green Water did work at Mr. Trump's Bedminster Golf Club. The company's owned by a trust run by Republican donor John Cafaro.
Look. When people say, doesn't Donald Trump make your job as a comedian easier? This is why the answer is actually no, because how can I make that funnier than it already is? They gave the pool job to a Trump crony whose company is literally called Green Water and who looks like he manages The Undertaker. Come on! No living person looks like this. He looks like the response to an AI prompt of, what if the concept of racketeering was a person? And even that is barely a joke, given that that man actually was convicted of conspiracy to bribe a congressman. You know what? I give up. Much like Donald Trump, when The Art of the Deal was being written, I'm simply not contributing here. Anyway, I know that this is far from the most important thing happening in America right now, but it is striking that even as this country celebrates turning 250, its capital city is dealing with a literal swamp of corruption. There are dead ducks in the Lincoln reflecting pool, and people are kicking each other in the face on the White House lawn. The symbolism here is pretty hard to miss. In fact, as metaphors for the current state of things in America go, all of that is, much like the sartorial sense of the president's biggest fan, a hat on a fucking hat. And now, this.
And now, the delightful rapport of KOLR's Jeremy Rabe and Tom Turton.
Welcome to this marvelous Monday. I'm Jeremy Rabe.
And I'm Tom Turton.
Yes, you are.
I am, and I have been for a while. You are really flashy today.
Well, it's
colorful.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Guess what?
What?
Saturday's Valentine's Day.
It is?
Then we'll see 5 people's first names that share a last name, and then we put the last name, and combined, it creates a new person. Does that make sense?
No, but I'll jump in.
All right, it is time to celebrate some celebrity birthdays. We shall guess. I did not cheat today, did you?
I didn't even know we were doing it until just now. Okay, it's time for a round of Would You Rather. Are you ready?
I'd rather
Would
not.
you rather? You'd rather
I'd
not?
rather not.
Okay, go to break.
My plants have not recovered yet from that cold snap we had last week. They look terrible. I'm really worried.
Maybe you got bad plans.
I love Schmigadoon. I
haven't seen it.
Oh, have you seen the TV show?
No.
Did you ever see the movie Barbie a couple years ago with Margot Robbie?
Absolutely not.
I look like a sofa from the 1950s.
I have no argument.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns voting. It's the #1 way to get a free pen from a woman born in 1904. Voting's also the subject of this bonkers early 90s PSA.
Art is not produced in a vacuum. Beauty cannot be regulated by the state. Music is a reflection of our culture. Today, our own government is trying to tell you what you should and shouldn't put in your tape deck. But there is a way out of the vacuum. Get to the polls on November 6th and exercise your right.
It's your turn to speak. Your vote is your voice.
What? Okay, setting aside the fact that seems to have been directed by a depressed Danish teenager, that is maybe the most early 90s thing I've ever seen. You've got SJP and Robert Downey Jr., who, fun fact, were a couple for 7 years, and you've got the sullen mention of a tape deck, which is basically like an iPod, but from the Civil War. I'm genuinely not sure you could get more 90s unless they both threw on Gretzky jerseys and invaded Iraqi-occupied Kuwait. Specifically, this story concerns the fact that while midterm elections are still 4 months away, some of the biggest decisions that may decide the results have actually already taken place. And that is thanks to a redistricting fight that's been raging all over the country.
Republicans in Texas currently hold 25 of the state's 38 congressional seats. The new map ups the total they could win to 30.
California voters have approved Proposition 50, redrawing congressional districts in a way that could cost Republicans 5 seats next year.
The Missouri Senate has passed a Trump-backed congressional map intended to help Republicans add an additional U.S. House seat.
The Louisiana State House has advanced an updated congressional map that is expected to remove at least one Democrat-leaning district.
That's right, tonight we're going to be talking about congressional maps, really solidifying this as the only comedy show on TV you feel like you should have studied more for. But look, that is what you get when you tune into, yes, unfortunately, this will be on the test, with Austin Downers. The point is, for the past year, Republicans and Democrats have been at war over congressional maps, with governors, state lawmakers, and especially the Supreme Court playing key roles. In fact, it's been predicted that thanks to this latest batch of redistricting alone, Republicans could gain between 3 to 12 more seats in Congress than they'd otherwise have done, which is significant because, remember, the last election gave them just a 5-seat majority. And given so many of these fights centre on breaking up majority black districts, people in them are understandably furious.
Chaos at the Tennessee Capitol in Nashville Thursday as Democratic lawmakers and protesters tried to stop legislation breaking up the state's only Democratic House seat. Yelling, holding signs, calling the move Jim Crow 2.0, even burning a printout of the Confederate flag.
Yeah, burning a printout of a Confederate flag is a pretty powerful response there. It effectively communicates 2 things. 1, we won't stand for rights being stripped away. And 2, I'm mad enough to put up with some pretty weird looks from a Staples employee when we printed this out. And if you've been seeing scenes like that and wondering how we got to this point, tonight, we thought we'd try and explain the current redistricting battle, specifically how damaging they could be and what could be done going forward. And let's start with the fact that redistricting in and of itself is not a bad thing. Populations aren't static and district lines should account for that. But the thing is, exactly how and where you draw them matters a lot. Because as we've discussed before, you can put a heavy thumb on the scale of who gets elected.
Imagine a hypothetical state with a population of 25 people. 10 belong to one party, 15 belong to the other. Now let's say they get to send 5 representatives to Congress. Draw the lines horizontally, you get proportional representation. 2 reps for the gray party and 3 from the white. But draw the district lines vertically and the gray party would get none, because the white party would have a majority in every district.
Exactly. Depending on how you draw the lines, you can give yourself a major advantage. And while I do appreciate the diagram there is simply no need to imagine a hypothetical state with 25 people. That is just Wyoming. You are talking about Wyoming. That practice of manipulating maps to get the outcome that you want is known as gerrymandering, and it has been a problem in the US for centuries. And you should know most of the world doesn't let its politicians do that, and for very good reason, as this professor explains.
Every fall, I speak to 5 or 6 members of the British Parliament that come over to shadow members of Congress. And one of the things I have to explain to them is, here's how you get elected to the House. I see these shocked looks on these British faces. And one time one stood up and said, well, that's terrible. That's not the voters choosing their representatives. That's the representatives choosing their voters.
Hey! Hey! Stop it! It is okay for me to do that voice. It is not okay for you to do it. Also, as an American, I do think you'd have been well within your rights to say to those British politicians, you know what? I don't want to hear shit about how maps should be drawn from anyone from Great Britain, which, by the way, is, I'm pretty sure, a direct Gandhi quote. The point is, in many states, the way we draw districts is deeply flawed. And even before the past year, the Supreme Court have managed to make it even worse. For instance, it used to be that redistricting was only done once a decade after the census, but in 2006, the court ruled that states can do it as many times as they want. Then in 2013, they effectively tossed out a requirement that areas with a history of discrimination get pre-clearance before redrawing maps. And in 2019, they ruled that federal courts couldn't stop states from drawing lines on a partisan basis. So if, in the helpful framing of that clip from earlier, the white party wanted to draw lines in a way that would take seats away from the non-white party, and there was no state law preventing it, the only thing stopping them would be their own sense of shame. All of which leads us back to last summer, when one of the most shameless presidents in US history made a pretty bold request of Texas to redraw their maps, and he was not shy about why he was asking.
On Texas, how many more seats do you want the Republicans to draw?
I think we get 5, and there could be some other states. We're going to get another 3 or 4 or 5 in addition. Texas would be the biggest one, and that'll be 5. No, just a very simple redrawing. We pick up 5 seats.
Yeah, that's pretty direct. He ordered 5 more Republican seats from Governor Greg Abbott, and as a result, in August, Abbott signed a new congressional map into law designed to do exactly that. So basically, Trump demanded more seats, and he got them. Which I know sounds like the answer to the question, why is Jeffrey Epstein's plane so full? But it's also true here. And in the wake of Texas's redistricting, Democratic leaders, for once, actually hit back hard. In fact, California Governor Gavin Newsom announced a ballot measure to implement new maps that would give Democrats up to 5 more seats, essentially offsetting what Texas had done. Here he is making his pitch.
It's not good enough to just hold hands, have a candlelight vigil, and talk about the way the world should be. We have got to recognize the cards that have been dealt, and we have got to meet fire with fire.
He's right, and now, unfortunately, I find myself in the unpleasant position of having to admit that Gavin Newsom is right about something, because, to be clear, I'm not a huge fan of that man for many reasons, from his general Andrew Cuomo but California vibes to the fact he vetoed a bill to limit solitary confinement, to his responding to book bans by posting this photo of himself reading page 0.5 of Beloved, with the caption, reading some banned books to figure out what these states are so afraid of, featuring the most orchestrated by a publicist stack of books I have ever seen. Oh, make sure 1984 is peeking out from under To Kill a Mockingbird, but not too much. That wouldn't seem organic. Oh, and this is very important. Please make sure that genderqueer is barely visible. And look, while I don't love the logic of Texas disenfranchised a bunch of Democratic voters, so in response, we're going to disenfranchise a bunch of California Republicans, I do also get that the only real alternative was to whine about fairness and then lose. And apparently a lot of Californians agreed, because Newsom's proposition passed easily. But the thing is, by the time that happened, more red states had already entered the fray. Missouri passed new congressional district boundaries in September, likely giving Republicans 1 more seat, and North Carolina did the same in October. So in response, Democrats in Virginia put a referendum to voters there that allowed them to do a particularly aggressive gerrymander that would potentially give them 10 seats to Republicans 1.
To make the map more blue, Democrats would carve up deep blue Fairfax County. Where I'm standing would be the intersection of 3 congressional districts, so that the apartment buildings over here would be in 1 congressional district, those over there would be in a 2nd, and then right over here, these folks would be in a 3rd congressional district. If you drove just a short distance away, you'd find a 4th congressional district and then a 5th.
That's led to a new Republican catchphrase, "Don't Fairfax me," popping up. Countering that, Texas started it, bumper stickers.
Now, I mean, that is obviously very petty, but also, as a slogan, "Don't Fairfax me" is just nonsense. Is it the worst one I've ever heard? No, because that would be Domino's new slogan, "You can't say Domino's without saying Although, I will point out, you also can't say Domino's without saying no, which feels much more relevant to me. Now, the good news for Democrats is Virginia's referendum passed in April, and at that point, they basically fought Republicans to a draw, with Hakeem Jeffries even promising maximum warfare if Republicans continued to redistrict. But unfortunately, soon after, everything fell apart. Because not only did Virginia's state Supreme Court wind up invalidating that referendum on technicalities, just a week earlier, the Supreme Court had handed Republicans this massive gift.
The Supreme Court escalating an intense back-and-forth battle for control of Congress, with a landmark ruling that's already affecting some elections. The court's conservative majority ruling 6-3 that Louisiana's current congressional map, with 2 majority African-American districts, is unconstitutional. Democrats blasting the ruling, arguing it weakens a key provision of the Voting Rights Act, aimed at prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, adding that other majority black districts are now vulnerable to being erased.
Yeah, from the 6 justices who brought you such banger decisions as the president is untouchable, your uterus is our legal property, and oops, all smog, came a brand new decision on voting rights. Very basically, under the Voting Rights Act, minority voters could previously challenge a map if it diluted minority representation in their state, regardless of whether that was the intention. It was to comply with that law that Louisiana drew a map that contained 2 majority black congressional districts. But in that Supreme Court case, a group of 12 self-described non-African-American voters claimed that their personal dignity had been injured by the map, which they said racially stigmatised, stereotyped and maligned them. And while I do appreciate them specifying that they were non-African-American, honey, that was already clear. This map hurt my feelings and now I want to talk to your manager. More than covered it. Yet, the court sided with them, with Alito writing that going forward, anyone challenging a map could only prevail if they had strong evidence the state intentionally drew its districts to afford minority voters less opportunity because of their race. Basically, unless state lawmakers were shouting out slurs while drawing the lines, they were going to be in the clear. And by issuing that ruling, the court immediately set off a new lightning round of gerrymandering, because even though Louisiana had already received more than 40,000 absentee ballots for its congressional primaries, their governor quickly declared a state of emergency and suspended the election so that new maps could be drawn. And unsurprisingly, those maps then eliminated one of Louisiana's 2 majority black districts. So right now, only one of the state's 6 districts is majority black, despite the fact its population is about 1/3 black. Now, understandably, many voters there were upset about this, but when Louisiana's governor was asked about that, he seemed personally offended.
I think a lot of African-American voters in this state might say they need that protection when it comes to the ballot box.
I mean, we go back to Martin Luther King, right? Judge a person based upon the content of their character rather than the color of their skin.
Wow, that is powerful stuff, Landry. You know, that actually reminds me of another Martin Luther King quote when he said, "Hey, can white people please learn more than 2 of my fucking quotes?" but for the record, history shows that without majority black districts, black candidates in Louisiana have basically no chance of getting elected. In fact, Louisiana, Mississippi and Alabama have never elected a black representative outside a majority black district, and no black candidate has been elected to statewide office in Louisiana since Reconstruction. And to her credit, Landry's interviewer actually pressed him on that point.
Black voters in Louisiana have told me that they feel like it's true. Someone who looks like you, who has not lived their experience, does not address their concerns as well as someone who has lived their experience.
Well, how is it that a little country boy who grew up in a town that was primarily black, not lived through those experiences?
But I do think a lot of folks might say those experiences are not necessarily the same.
Well, you're saying I should not judge a person just because the person is black, and I agree with that. But isn't it the opposite, that I shouldn't be judged just because I'm white or Hispanic or Indian? I mean, here we are, after all of the different cases, after all of the rectification of the sins of the past, which certainly no one has denied, and yet we're still trying to find some sliver of discrimination in race.
I think a lot of people would say you don't have to try to find it, it's there.
I would say that you find that it would reside in people's hearts, not in their laws.
OK, that man is clearly a historic idiot, but I will agree with him on one point. He shouldn't be judged just because he is white. He should be judged because, 1, he just had to have the concept of racism explained to him on TV. 2, he's for some reason dressed like 30 Rock's Leap Day William. And 3, he sounds like Elmer Fudd if he exclusively went to schools named after Robert E. Lee. But Louisiana was not alone in moving fast after that Supreme Court ruling. Tennessee also quickly approved a new map that slices Memphis, a majority black city, into 3 extremely long districts that drag into rural areas. And while doing so, Tennessee Republicans insisted that they were acting for purely partisan reasons, which, remember, the Supreme Court has said is OK, and that they were completely unaware that in doing so, they were screwing over black voters. And while I've shown you this clip before, it is worth seeing again just how flagrantly dumb they were willing to pretend to be.
To the sponsor, are you aware that Memphis is predominantly African American?
Senator Stevens to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am not.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So to my sponsor, who went to law school at the University of Memphis and lived there for 3 years, you're telling me you're not aware that Memphis is predominantly African American. Am I correct?
Senator Lamar, he's answered that. Next question, please.
Next question, please? Oh, I've got a question for you. Are you fucking kidding me? Because you know that guy's answer was bad when it got a laugh so big it sounded like that debate was being filmed in front of a live studio audience. Meanwhile, Alabama also called a special session to force a series of votes on its maps at both the state and congressional levels. And as you will hear this state senator point out, it forced one of those votes through even as the building was being evacuated for a tornado warning.
Now, you know what? This don't even make sense. We should have gone into a recess and then waited until after the weather to take this vote. But they want to do this so bad. That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
It's true. They forced the vote during an evacuation, which isn't just disrespectful to Alabama voters and those who fought for civil rights. Somehow, it even managed to be disrespectful to the tornado. Here was a storm doing its very best to extend from the base of a cumulonimbus cloud and form a rapidly rotating column of air. And state legislators are just willfully ignoring that to implement racist voting maps. Have some fucking respect! And in case that wasn't a potent enough summary of things, when the Supreme Court gave Alabama final clearance to use a congressional map that had previously been found to be racially discriminatory, the state's AG released this celebratory video.
My job in this office was to put the legislature in the best possible legal position to draw a congressional map that favors Republicans 7-0. My office has never taken the charge of our state motto lightly. We dare defend our rights. Stay tuned.
Wow, what a smile that is. He looks like Mr. Rogers if he'd made a famous episode in favour of segregation instead of against it. But despite what he just said there, implementing racially discriminatory maps is not actually an AG's job at all. It's like if you went to a Build-A-Bear workshop and one of the employees said, "My job in this store is to baptise every stuffed animal so that they may enter the kingdom of heaven." No, it is very much not that. You just wanted to do it. And to be honest, I'd like my platypus to go to hell, thank you very much. But incredibly, I am still not done, because Florida also passed a new map which could add 3 to 4 Republican seats. Now, plans for that had technically been in the works before the Supreme Court decision, but Ron DeSantis seemed extra confident afterwards, and I'm going to warn you, you are not ready for the choice he makes midway through this clip.
Sometimes you got people in D.C. and New York who may not like, and they may say different stuff. And we've got this guy, Hakeem Jeffries. Okay? And, you know, he goes out there and he's like, we're gonna do maximum warfare against Republicans. Florida Republicans, you F around, you gonna find out all this stuff.
Holy shit! I never thought I'd see blackface without the makeup. But it seems there's a first time for everything. I don't have a ton to say about that, really, except A, fuck you. And B, maybe someone show that clip to Governor Lollipop here the next time he describes racism as something you need to try and find. And when you take this whole redistricting back and forth together, it will, as I said earlier, probably give Republicans up to 12 seats in the House, which doesn't mean they'll automatically win the House in November, but it makes the margin for Democrats meaningfully smaller. Also, everything you've seen so far only addresses what was able to be done before the midterms, But it won't end there. In the coming years, Republicans in southern states could ultimately eliminate majority-minority districts altogether, taking America back to the Jim Crow era when there were no black representatives in southern states with sizable black populations. And there'll likely be major impacts on other levels of government too, from city councils to school boards to state legislatures. And for those who fought so hard for their voting rights, watching them get stripped away this fast is brutal. Because it is worth remembering, the progress that's currently being undone happened in living memory for many. In fact, just listen to this man outside the Florida State House in April as they were passing their new map.
Being 79, I come from a Jim Crow era where blacks were second-class citizens. It will not happen again. I feel bad about it. Not for me, because I have a short time being here. But for my grandchildren, my great-grands, I do not want them going through what I experienced.
Yeah, and if that doesn't make the point here, I really don't know what does. So what do we do? Well, Democrats aren't completely out of options. After November, more states under Democratic control could pursue partisan gerrymanders to try and offset the damage, from New York to Maryland to Illinois, where one House Democrat has said there's a nuclear option of a 17-0 map, meaning no Republican districts at all. And while initially the idea of total warfare here is undeniably satisfying, it is worth remembering there are more red states that could jump in and respond too, and you may not like how that fight ends. Look, the long-term goal here should probably be to find a way to try and unfuck every state's maps. And if Democrats are able to get back into power, there are ways to get to that point. For instance, Congress could pass a new version of the John Lewis Act, which would, among other things, modernise and revitalise the Voting Rights Act and ban partisan gerrymandering. The House actually passed it in 2022, but it couldn't get past a Senate filibuster. But the hard truth here is we may need to think bigger than that, because a new voting rights law isn't going to mean much if the Supreme Court just steps in to undo it. That is why we also need significant Supreme Court reform. There's actually a House bill that would be a start there, providing each president equal opportunities to appoint justices by establishing staggered 18-year term limits for the court. And who knows, maybe that could bring about the change that this magnificent home, this beautiful, beautiful motor home, could not. Look, the current situation is clearly untenable, which is why all options should be on the table to get us to a system where, ideally, if I may quote someone using what turned out to be by far the least offensive accent you have heard tonight, the voters choose their representatives, not the representative choosing their bloody voters. And now, this.
And now, let's check back in with KOLR's Jeremy Rabe and Tom Turton.
That is delicious. I mean, that is tasty. What, Tom?
Moving on. Before we go, we're going to be off for the next few weeks, so I wanted to share a quick update about soap operas. You may remember back in March, we discovered that Stephen A. Smith has been quietly playing the role of Brick on General Hospital for the last 10 years, which filled me with, in equal measure, immense confusion and scorching hot jealousy. So I did the only thing any sane person would do in that situation. I offered myself to any soap opera that would create a role for me, an offer that I made right before I was shot on stage by Colonel Sanders, which I promised made perfect sense at the time. Now, since then, you might have stumbled across headlines about my passionate request in outlets like Soap Hub, Daytime Confidential and Cleveland.com. Although, when the Daily Mail wrote about it, they weren't quite so kind, as their headline was John Oliver's Private Panic, late-night curse spreads and host prepares for worst as insiders reveal his desperate plan B and the industry whispers swirling about his fate. At first, let me say, it is a true honour to be featured on a website that just this week published the story I had so much sex during my sluttiest ever summer until one girlfriend caught me doing something so shameful I thought I might die. But to be clear here, soap acting is not my plan B. My actual plan B is obviously being a Mr. Bean impersonator for the strangest little children's birthday parties. And to clarify things even further, my plea wasn't me preparing for the worst. I simply offered my hypothetical acting abilities to any soap that would meet my terms, which were, I wanted to play a character with a ridiculous name, I wanted a juicy storyline like murder or slapping, and I wanted a dramatic close-up of my face. Well, I'm thrilled to announce I have an update, because I don't know if you've ever heard of a little show called Days of Our Lives, the American icon that gave us unforgettable moments like the devil possessing Marlena, Sammy Brady trying to rescue Philip from Iraq by going in full soldier drag, and Bo Brady discovering a mysterious woman in a bayou that everyone called Swamp Girl until learning she was actually a princess. Well, I'm happy to say that I've already taped a week of episodes on Days of Our Lives, which is clearly a huge honour. It's been home to some of the most renowned soap opera actors like Deirdre Hall, Susan Seaforth Hayes, and John Aniston of the Anistons. It's also featured guest appearances from legends like Dick Van Dyke, Betty White, and now me. The only other time you'd hear my name alongside those two would be if someone were trying to answer the question, name 3 celebrities you could reasonably guess were born in the 1920s. But the truth is, Days of Our Lives wasn't actually the only show that reached out. And if you read that Daily Mail article, you'd have seen that they claimed that General Hospital pitched me an emotional role, but I turned it down because, and I quote, he only wants to play fun parts. And I don't know where the fuck they got that from. Because if General Hospital had genuinely pitched me a role and given me the chance to hang out in Port Charles, the home of Luke and Laura, the Corinthos family, and Brick, if they'd given me the chance to join the ranks of guest stars like Liz Taylor, Sammy Davis Jr., and, of course, the great Colonel Sanders, then I'd have leapt at the chance, which is why I'm so very glad that they actually did, because it means that I now get to announce that I will also be appearing in General Hospital this summer, because what is funnier than being in one soap opera, being in 2? You can see me on, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, General Hospital on ABC next week. And while I'm not going to spoil anything, I will show you this picture of my character. Yes, that is me, surrounded by men with guns, and yes, my hair has been dipped in an inkwell. And if you cannot tell from my face there, I'm acting really hard. I'm acting my hardest, in fact. I don't want to brag, but they did say that of any guest star they've ever had, I used the most takes. Now, it is only fair that I also show you a photo from my time on Days of Our Lives, so brace yourselves, because here it is. Yes, that is real. The photo, that is, not the hair. I look like Elvis reincarnated into his accountant. I look like Rachel Maddow after witnessing a murder. I look like Rogain's worst-case scenario. What I love most about that photo is that even though you can only see the back of the other actor's neck, you can tell how much I visually don't belong anywhere near him. His back is an LA 10 and my front is a Middle-earth 3. I genuinely cannot wait for everyone to see what these 2 soaps have done. I'm so grateful that they played along with us, and I'm truly looking forward to reading about it afterwards in the Daily Mail, which I can only guess will write something like, HBO host hits rock bottom with multiple soap opera roles. Insiders and doctors worry he's nearing death. Well, you're going to be eating your words, Daily Mail, because does this look like a desperate man to you? Not to me, it doesn't. That's the face of a man living his fucking dream. I'll be on General Hospital July 2nd, 3rd and 6th, and on Days of Our Lives August 11th, 12th and 14th. That is our show. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back July 26th. Good night.